Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryan Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma viddvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Very good. Welcome back. We'll continue our introduction to Vedanta. This is only our second class. We have a long way to go. In our first class, we had discussed the purpose of Vedanta. Vedanta not being a system of belief, which is intended to get you to heaven. Vedanta not being a philosophy, which is meant to impart knowledge unto you. The purpose of Vedanta, as we discussed at great length in our prior class, is to put an end to the problem of suffering. Vedanta is moksha, shastra, a scripture for the sake of moksha, and moksha, properly understood, is not merely freedom from rebirth, it is freedom from suffering here and now, and that's our goal. Now, with regard to that, can I ask everyone to sit in the front half of the room, please? Otherwise, I can't see you in the dark. So, based on our discussion in the last class, there's a nice question that was asked. Here. You have stated that moksha is freedom from suffering. Somehow, that gives me a sense that I am suffering. It creates a vibration in my body and makes me feel more insecure and fearful, which may add even more suffering to my initial suffering. Good. And I'm not being facetious. Before I answer the question, let me give a metaphor. Suppose you went to see a doctor, and the doctor, in his examination, thinks, you might have cancer, but cancer is a very negative diagnosis. And so the doctor tries to put a positive spin on it and says, yeah, looks like you might, but I don't really think you have cancer. I think you're perfectly fine and healthy. Don't worry about it. Is that really, cancer is not good news. Absolutely not. But do you really want a doctor who's going to minimize the problem of cancer? Wouldn't you rather know the truth, get a proper diagnosis, so you can get proper treatment? There's a kind of teaching that's popular in modern times, not just in the Hindu tradition, all over the place, where teachers want to put a positive spin on everything. For example, in Christianity, it's the so-called prosperity gospel. Instead of talking about how Jesus Christ suffered and died to free you of your sins, which is a central theme of Christianity, they don't teach that. They teach you God wants you to be wealthy. They teach that. That's not the message of Christianity at all, but it sounds good. It makes us feel good. And we find that in other traditions as well. For example, the so-called New Age tradition that's popular in this country. On examination, the New Age is not very new. It seems to be based on ancient Hinduism for the most part. But the way it's presented is to make you feel good. Well, if you want to feel good, that's fine. If the doctor says, I don't think you have cancer, let me give you these placebo pills and you'll be fine. To make you feel good is not the goal. The goal is to become free from suffering. Vedanta is not a quick, feel-good teaching at all. In fact, the beginning of any proper teaching of Vedanta begins with a thorough identification of the problem of suffering, which is where we began. And we're not done with it yet. And just to underline this point, in traditional texts in Sanskrit, usually in the commentaries, the Sanskrit commentaries on this text, they talk about the nature of a mumukshu. A mumukshu is one who wants moksha, one who wants freedom from suffering. And they say, what should be the attitude of the mumukshu? This metaphor is given in several places. The mumukshus should be so highly motivated to gain moksha, so highly motivated to pursue the teachings of Vedanta. How motivated? As motivated as, and this is a metaphor they give, like someone whose hair has caught on fire and is running towards a pond of water. How's that? The hair on fire means pain, experiencing pain, and therefore, can I ask everyone to sit in the front half of the classroom, please? Thank you. In the front half of the classroom, please. Thank you. So look at that portrayal. That portrayal shows the importance of identifying the severity of the problem. And in today's class, we're going to discuss further the severity of the problem. The problem is so severe that in life, you will continue to suffer and suffer and suffer. Of course, life isn't only suffering. We all know that. There are moments of happiness. Another nice metaphor. They say the moments of happiness we enjoy in life, it's like you're holding on to a nice sweet, and then you drop it. And then all you get to do is lick your fingers. That's the way it's described. I mean, you get some sweet, you get to enjoy that, but that's not much compared to what is possible in life. So that's how worldly life is typified. They call it samsara. Samsara, the literal meaning of the word samsara in Sanskrit, is that which keeps going. Goes on and on and on and on. And what it refers to is at both levels. What goes on and on and on and on is your suffering in this life. And then this life is followed by another life of suffering, which is followed by another life of suffering, which is followed by, you get it. So this is what is meant by the word samsara. It's an endless search for happiness and contentment that ends up being fruitless and frustrating because it's misdirected. And this is really our topic for today. I think we've got this under control. Okay, so we pick up the thread. If the goal of Vedanta is to be free from suffering, remember we distinguish between pain and suffering. And we said, by the way, if you miss a class, it'll be important for you to have continuity. These classes are posted to our website, so I highly encourage, if you miss a class, go to our website, listen to that class. Otherwise, you're going to miss a lot of connections in the ensuing classes. If you have that continuity, you'll be able to follow everything fine. Would you turn this up just a little bit? I'm having to project my voice too much. A tiny bit. So we distinguished between pain and suffering, and I don't want to go through all of that again. So let's put it like this. Remember, we ended up with that movie theater example. You can watch a really sad movie, and yet you enjoy it. Somehow movie theater sadness is acceptable or even enjoyable, whereas real life sadness is not. And the difference is this. In real life, we not only experience sadness, we experience pain. Remember the distinction we made. And that pain seems to affect us badly. Because pain affects us, we suffer. The distinction was in a movie theater, you don't experience pain. If somebody gets stabbed with a knife, you don't experience that pain. So in a movie theater, you have sadness without pain. And here's where we begin tonight. If the experience of pain is an inevitable part of this life, there's no such thing as freedom from suffering. Yet, pain seems like such a fundamental experience of life. And this is where the rishis made a proclamation that on first sight looks incredible. Incredible in the sense of too good to be true. Right? That's what the word incredible means, right? Credible means that which is believable. Incredible means that which is not believable. What the ancient rishis declared is pain doesn't affect you at all. Say what? That's what they taught. Pain doesn't affect you. Pain seems to affect you. Pain doesn't affect you at all. How could they say such a thing? We'll see it briefly now, and then we're going to unpack this very gradually as we go through these classes. But in brief, the rishis said your true nature is Sat, Chit, Ananda. You've heard this before. What do these three words mean? Sat, Chit, Ananda. Sat, since these definitions are important, let's get them up on the board. So, Sat means that which is real. Chit, consciousness. And Ananda we'll come to in a moment. You've heard these words, Sat, Chit, Ananda. Now, when the rishis say Sat is that which is real, they mean, you can leave the light on, they mean really real, unconditionally real. That which is unconditionally real is that which exists without conditions, without limits. For example, without time limits. That which is real is that which exists without limitations in time. To exist without limitations in time means to be timeless. To be timeless means to be unborn, uncreated, and unchanging. That's a lot in that word real. So real does not mean, every time I say that, I think of, we use in Sanskrit, the expression is sadvastu, which translates as a real thing. Problem is, the Coca-Cola company has superseded that term. So whenever I say sadvastu or think it in my mind, I think Coca-Cola. Hey, what a shame that very profound expression has been somehow distorted by this soft drink manufacturer. So, sadvastu, this Sanskrit word, that thing which is real, our definition of real is that which exists now, that which has always existed in the past, meaning it was never born or created, that which will always exist in the future, meaning it's not subject to change and destruction and decay. We can use a simple word, eternal. So then real means what? On examination, we'll put some other English words here. How about eternally existent? That's not bad. Then, consciousness. Consciousness means what? Please, we have to use our Vedantic definition of consciousness, which is real different than other definitions of consciousness. For example, medical professionals use the term consciousness to talk about a patient's responsiveness, right? That's not our meaning. Other meanings. How about environmental consciousness? That's also not our meaning. That means attentiveness. Our definition of consciousness is this. How do you know what's happening in your mind right now? The answer to that question is consciousness. That's our definition. I'll say it again. It's really crucial. How do you know what's happening in your mind right now? That's what we mean by consciousness. It's not responsiveness that the medical professionals use. It doesn't have anything to do with environmental consciousness and this kind of usage. This consciousness, just to make a point, by the way, we're just getting the very brief analysis of Atma. I didn't put that word up here. I should have. We're talking about when the rishis said that you are not subject to pain, they're referring obviously to Atma, the true self, and that Atma, or true self, is Satchidananda. And this is the brief unfoldment we'll do now. The bigger form will come very gradually over quite a few classes. But for now, this consciousness we're talking about is not an attribute of your mind. It's that by which your mind is known. I'll say that again, because it's important. The consciousness in our definition, neuroscientists can define it whatever they want. We're not neuroscientists, that's not our orientation. Our definition of consciousness is that which is not an attribute of your mind, it's that by which your mind is known. Got it? This is really important. This will get you off on the right point. Now, we have these two words. By the way, we're not talking about three different things, right? It's not Atma, which is Sat plus Chit plus Ananda. It's not like Atma has three parts. Atma is Sat, which is Chit, which is Ananda. So, Atma is what? Atma, by the way, means you. When you use the pronoun I, the ultimate meaning of that pronoun is this Atma. After all, you wouldn't point at your body and say I. The ultimate meaning of I is Atma. This Atma is consciousness, that by which your thoughts are known. And that consciousness happens to be eternally existing, unborn, uncreated, unchanging is going to be a big topic, not for now. And finally, that Atma is the true source of happiness. Everyone says that happiness comes from within, and we'll examine that in just a few moments. What does that mean? Happiness comes from within. The rishis said the same thing, although they didn't use English words. Happiness comes from within. They used the word Ananda. Now, please note, Ananda cannot be translated as an experience of bliss, as many people incorrectly translate. Why? An experience of bliss occurs in your mind and is known how? Because of the consciousness, which is Atma. So any kind of experiential bliss belongs to your mind. We're not talking about your mind. We're talking about that by which the mind is known. So this ananda we're talking about is not experiential bliss, better understood as the inner self being the source of happiness, which we'll talk about in just a few moments. Now, sorry, I just lost that thought. Should warn you, I've had one of those days. But I don't like to cancel classes, so that's what we meet anyway. I'll get back on track here. There we go. Sorry. Everyone has heard the very common Hindu teaching that your true nature is divine. Very common teaching. Your true nature is divine. Good, but what exactly does that mean? When you stand in front of, this is my standard joke, when you stand in front of a mirror, do you see divinity? And if you really want to be bold, take off your clothes and then look for the divinity. Where is it? So when we say that your true nature is divine, what are we talking about? That's our subject matter. Divine means having the same nature as the deity, as God. Divine means having a godly nature. You won't get that in a mirror. In a mirror, you see the physical body, lump of flesh. If you want to understand the godly nature inside, we need some help through the teachings of Vedanta, which reveal that your true self is eternally existent. There you go. Sharing the qualities of the deity. That which is consciousness, intelligence. We live in an intelligent universe. That intelligence being God's intelligence, Ishvara's intelligence. And finally, source of, that was that last part, Ananda. We said our definition is source of happiness. So, Ishvara, God, as the source of all that is good, source of all blessings, that divinity. So the only thing about us that could possibly be divine is Atma. Not our bodies, not our minds, not our senses, not our emotions, not our memories, not our intellects. The only thing about us that can meet this definition of divine, having godly characteristics, is Atma, which is Sat Chit Ananda. Now this is very brief, and this is just to give you a sense of direction as we go on. This is certainly not an adequate teaching to understand your true nature as Sat Chit Ananda. That's not what we're attempting to do. But just to get a general grasp on what the ancient rishis taught. Now we can begin to explore this in more depth. And that's where we continue. So, if your true nature is divine, if your true nature is Satchidananda Atma, then why are we suffering? You can answer that question, I think. Our true nature may be Satchidananda Atma, but we don't know that. It's hidden from us. It's as though covered by a veil of ignorance. That veil of ignorance prevents us from recognizing our innate fullness and completeness. And look at it like this. This is a nice observation. Everyone seems to profess that the true source of happiness lies within. This is a favorite observation. You also know that. You also would in a conversation with friends, you would say, yes, of course, we all know that the true source of happiness lies within. So you would also profess that to be true. So if it is true in your mind, from your worldview, if it's true that the true source of happiness lies within, then I ask you this question. In a given day, how much time do you spend seeking happiness at its true source within you? And how much time throughout the day do you spend seeking happiness outside in the world? You get it? We profess that the true source of happiness lies within, but it's just a saying. It's just words. They call it a sound bite. Doesn't mean anything. We profess it, we don't know it, we haven't discovered that truth. If you have discovered that truth, it radically changes the way we think. But here's what happens. Because your true nature, as the source of happiness, is covered, as it were, by a veil of ignorance, we then feel that the source of happiness is not here, it's out there. If the source of happiness is out there, it means here there's a deficiency. There's something defective or lacking or wanting here, and I need something outside to fill that gap. We feel incomplete. We feel inadequate. We feel lacking. These are when I use these words, I can hear my guru's voice, because he used these very same words in describing what he called the fundamental problem. What Pujya Swami Dayananda called the fundamental problem, he himself defined with this expression, self-non-recognition. I've never heard anyone else use that term. He's used it. Self-non-recognition means to fail to understand yourself as that inner divinity, Atma, which is Satchidananda. And due to that veil of ignorance, due to this self-non-recognition, failing to understand the innate fullness and completeness as a source of happiness, failing to recognize that, we naturally judge ourselves as lacking and wanting because the source of happiness is out there. It's not in here. I have to get that source of happiness and somehow get it inside so I can feel more complete. Without that external source of happiness, I am incomplete. That sense of incompleteness is always there, and it drives us to seek outside of ourselves for whatever we think will make us happy and complete. Now, before we go on, I don't often get into this detail, but I think it's a helpful detail. Somebody might argue, maybe that sense of incompleteness is natural. We're just naturally incomplete. It's kind of very straightforward materialistic thinking. Of course you feel incomplete. Look at you. No wonder you feel incomplete. You get the idea. So this is typical materialistic thinking, and therefore you better go and get this and that and the other thing, and then maybe you'll be in a little bit better shape. Now, here's the Vedantic response to that. if this sense of incompleteness were natural, I need to precede that by the statement, according to what we've established so far, this sense of incompleteness is due to self-non-recognition. It's due to ignorance. But the argument of the materialist is that this sense of incompleteness is who you are as a human being. It's natural. In Sanskrit, swabhava. So to respond to that materialist, here's our argument. That which is natural is fine. Right? So natural, like natural food, that which is in nature, natural is fine. It won't make sense until I give you the central metaphor. It's that which is unnatural that's the problem. And here's a metaphor that's given in commentaries. I don't think you find this in any scripture. But in Sanskrit commentaries, you get this example that this feeling of incompleteness is like a speck of dust in your eye. It goes on irritating you and bothering you because it doesn't belong there. It's a foreign object. It's not natural to you. It's not properly placed in your eye. That which is unnatural, that which doesn't belong there, is a source of irritation. Get rid of that source of irritation and you're fine. Anyway, this is just a little side argument to respond to any materialist who might challenge us. How can you say the materialist is going to deny that the source of happiness lies within? We absolutely hold on to that. In fact, let's explore that further. That the true self is a source of happiness. Your natural condition is not lacking or wanting or incomplete. Your natural condition is in fact Satchidananda Atma. Now, to explore this, we're going to explore just for a moment what happens due to this self-non-recognition, failing to recognize that true source of happiness and contentment within. It's only natural for us to desire whatever we think will make us more full and complete. Here's the origin of desire. Desire arises when we fail to appreciate our own innate fullness and completeness, and therefore we desire whatever we think might make us feel more full and more complete. If you knew you were full and complete, why would you desire anything? So it's the non-recognition of your innate fullness and completeness, the failure to know your true nature as ananda, as a source of happiness. Due to that non-recognition, it's inevitable that we will desire things that will make us feel full and complete. Now we're back to the materialists. Because the materialists will say that you become happy by fulfilling desires. This is common sense. Most people would agree with that, right? You fulfill a desire, you become happy. Fulfill another desire, you become happy. Fulfill another desire, you become happy. Is it so? Is it possible to become happy without fulfilling a desire? Sure. Absolutely. Suppose you watch a sunset. Beautiful sunset you watch. Or for some of you, is looking at a really cute baby or puppy dog. That kind of thing. You look at this cute baby or puppy dog and you smile. So when you smile, looking at that cute puppy, what desire did you fulfill? Oh. Without fulfilling a desire, you become happy Well, why is that so? We're building our argument for why the true source of happiness lies within. Now I get to share with you one of my favorite anecdotes. Many, many years ago, I was teaching a group of school children and teaching something not so technical like this, but something about the source of happiness. I asked a group of kids, what is the source of happiness? One boy said, chocolate ice cream. Okay. If you have one scoop of chocolate ice cream, will that make you happy? I said, yes. Suppose you have 2 scoops. He said, I'd be twice as happy. Suppose you have 3 scoops. You said, I'd be 3 times as happy. And I said, suppose, when they scoop out that ice cream, it comes out of these big containers. Suppose you ate that entire container of ice cream. This is a true story. The boy said, that would be totally awesome. His exact words. The boy would be totally sick. But look at the boy's thinking. The boy thinks that you eat ice cream and you become happy. Therefore, the source of happiness is the ice cream. It's like it's an ingredient in the ice cream. So what's inside the ice cream is milk and sugar. By the way, you look at the ingredients. They'll usually milk, sugar, corn syrup, which is sugar, fructose, which is sugar. It goes on like that. And then some other unpronounceable chemicals are all there, and whatever it is. But will you find happiness in that list of ingredients? Yet, you become happy when you eat that ice cream. There's actually a very profound Vedantic analysis about what happens. So you eat, the simple analysis is, you eat the ice cream. Happiness is not an ingredient in the ice cream. So where can that happiness possibly come from? That's the simple analysis. Here's the more profound analysis. We talked about that speck of dust in the eye, that sense of incompleteness, which is like an irritating factor. Always feeling like it's not good enough, it's not okay, everything is not perfect, I'm not completely content. This low-level sense of discontentment. That's a nice way of putting it. A low level means it's not that you're crying and depressed, but a low level, constant sense of discontentment. Like that speck of dust. Then you put this ice cream in your mouth and you really enjoy it. And while you're enjoying the ice cream, you kind of ignore this sense of discontentment. Because your attention is focused on the nice flavor and texture of that ice cream. As long as your attention is on the ice cream, your attention is temporarily withdrawn from that sense of discontentment, that low-level sense of discontentment within. And that's what causes happiness. There's something very subtle here. Let's make sure that we understand this. Happiness, again, going back to that saying, the true source of happiness is within. Well, if that's so, then why do you need the ice cream? Why do you need anything? So, that true source of happiness is within. Of course, the ancient sages said, Ananda, nature of Atma is Ananda, source of happiness. It's always there. Not just is it that Atma becomes Ananda when you eat the ice cream? No, Atma is continually that Ananda, always the source of happiness. Then what happens is eating the ice cream doesn't produce the source of happiness, but rather it removes that sense of discontentment, that irritation. Let me give a metaphor and make it more clear. It's like on a outside, when there's a big cloud covering the sun, everything is kind of dark and subdued. Does the sun shine when it's covered? It shines, but you don't get to experience its brilliance and its warmth. When the cloud is removed, the continually shining sun is revealed in your experience. It's always been shining, but your experience of the sun has been covered up by that cloud. In the same, you see where this is going. That true source of happiness is always within. After all, it's your true nature as Satchidananda Atma. But that source of happiness gets covered up. We've already talked about, you used the expression, the veil of ignorance covers that true self. Now we're using a slightly different expression and saying that true self can be covered by that irritation, that sense of dissatisfaction, that feeling that everything is not quite okay, that low-level discontentment. So when that low-level discontentment gets removed, what remains is the source of happiness, which is completely present in your experience. Prior to the ice cream, that source of happiness was covered up by that sense of incompleteness. When you eat the ice cream, you relax, it goes away. In fact, not only when you eat ice cream, maybe the best example of what's being taught here is when you fall asleep. Before you fall asleep, you may have 1,000 problems in your head and 1,000 things that are wrong with your life, 1,000 things that are wrong with you. And then the moment before you fall asleep, all of that fades away. And as soon as they fade away, what do you feel? It's like the cloud leaving the face of the sun. The sun shines brightly. When all of these negative thoughts, if we can use that term, when they are dispelled, when they fade away in that moment before you fall asleep, then that source of happiness is fully revealed without impediment. Now, a last observation here then. This is contrary to common sense, or contrary to common wisdom. That's the word I'm looking for. And that is, happiness, by this definition, happiness is not the result of getting something, but rather happiness is the result of getting rid of something. Does that make sense? Happiness is not getting something because you already are that source of happiness. Then, happiness must be getting rid of something. In fact, in our tradition, that's nicely shown by our use of the word shanti. Shanti, of course, means peace, and we can say we seek happiness. You can say we seek shanti. They're virtually synonyms anyway. Whatever you seek. Call it happiness, call it shanti, call it contentment. So, this word shanti we almost always translate as peace, which is a fine translation, except if you look at the literal meaning of the word, you discover something different. Because the word shanti comes from a Sanskrit root which means to be quiet. A very literal translation of the word shanti would be quietude. Quiet, of course, is the absence of noise. If you want quiet, what do you have to get? It's not a matter of what you get. It's a matter of getting rid of something. This word shanti was deliberately used by the ancient rishis because shanti is not what you get. Shanti is who you are. It's what remains when you get rid of something. Shanti is this ananda, the source of happiness, Satchit Ananda. It's your true nature. But that true nature, as we say, it's covered by that veil of ignorance or covered by this sense of incompleteness and dissatisfaction. When you get rid of the veil of ignorance, when you get rid of that nagging sense of incompleteness, what remains is shanti. You can't get shanti. You are shanti. And that shanti becomes fully manifest in your experience when that veil of ignorance is removed, when that nagging sense of incompleteness is removed. This is the vision of the ancient rishis, that your true nature, Atma, that so-called inner divinity, is Satchidananda Atma. And now we close the loop on our first topic here, and it's to say that this Atma is not affected by pain. Not affected by pain because pain belongs to your mind, and we've already said that this consciousness is separate from the mind. This consciousness is what reveals the mind. We're going to develop this much further, but we have several more classes before we can get there to establish, and let me just hint at it, this eternally existent means not only unborn and unborn and uncreated, it also means unchanging. Unchanging means unaffected. All of this has to be established. We're going to establish it. We're not ready to establish it now. But at this point, what we need to understand is the ancient rishis revealed your true nature to be Satchidananda Atma, which remains Satchidananda Atma even in the presence of pain. Atma remains Satchidananda even in the presence of pain, and knowing that there will be no suffering. Remember, movie theater suffering is okay because there's no pain. Real life suffering is there because we experience pain. Suppose, with the wisdom of the ancient rishis, you can come to understand that Satchidananda Atma, the truth of who you are, is utterly unaffected by pain. With that discovery, and by the way, you can't fake it. You have to really, with the help of these teachings, discover it for yourself. With the help of these teachings, you discover that the truth of who you are, that consciousness, is utterly unaffected by pain. And if you know yourself to be unaffected by pain, there'll be no suffering at all. Remember, we said in prior class, suffering is our response to pain. If pain affects you, definitely you'll suffer. But if pain, and remember we said both emotional pain and physical pain, if you know that you're affected by neither emotional or physical pain, there will be no suffering. All right. Good. So, due to this veil of ignorance covering your true nature, due to this self-non-recognition, we fail to recognize the true source of happiness within, and we end up looking in all the wrong places, right? The traditional story that's told is a lady couldn't find her necklace. So she was looking all over her house, in every room, in every drawer of the dresser, and looking and looking and looking. She couldn't find her necklace. Why? She was looking in all the wrong places. She was looking outside and not inside. This is a short story. There's a wonderful, brilliant story that's used to illustrate this, which we're going to see in some detail here. It's called the 10th man story. Many of you have heard this before. They call it 10th man story, Dashama Purusha in Sanskrit, but it's usually about 10 boys, not 10 men. These 10 boys were students in a gurukulam, a traditional school. They lived and studied with their guru. And at one point there was a special festival coming. Navaratri is starting this week, so maybe some festival was coming, and the guru addressed his 10 students and gave them directions to go to a nearby temple for some celebrations. The guru himself was too old to travel, so he told the boys, you go. Now, nearby meant about 2 or 3 days travel on foot. So anyway, these boys set off to go to the temple. They have to cross these forests and jungles and fields, and there's some rivers they have to cross. One river they had to cross was too deep. They couldn't wade across it. There was no ferry boat available. So one by one, each of the 10 boys swam to the other side of the river. On the other side of the river, they wanted to make sure that everyone got across safely. So they're going to, like in school where they do roll call, they're going to make sure everyone got across safely. One of the boys decides he's going to count the others to make sure everyone is safe. So he counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He paused. Apparently not very good student, but anyway, not one of the brightest of the students. He forgot to count himself. And he said, where is the 10th boy? Another one of the students said, you don't know how to count. Let me count. So he counts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He also forgets to count himself. Then the third boy counts to 9. And the fourth boy counts. Each of the 10 boys count. Each of the 10 boys only count to 9, having failed to count themselves. And they conclude that the 10th boy is missing. And therefore, they start running all over the place looking for their missing friend, the missing student. So they're looking in the fields and forests on one side of the river, on the other side of the river. They're looking upstream. They're looking downstream. And look at the irony. Each of the 10 boys is looking for whom? Right? They forgot to count. Each forgot to count himself. Each is looking for himself. You see the brilliance of this metaphor when we're looking for happiness outside of ourselves, knowing here that the true source of happiness lies within, failing to recognize that truth about ourselves, we focus our attention outside in the world and we start chasing around for whatever we think happens to be the source of happiness. How utterly misdirected and how ironic. What is the irony? What are we actually searching for? What is here? Another traditional metaphor found in scripture and commentary is a deer. They call them musk deer. And they're attracted to this particular scent. Apparently, for mating, I suppose, attracted to this particular scent. So there's one deer constantly smelled that scent and couldn't figure, where is it coming from? And went this direction looking for that scent, went every direction. Whatever direction the deer went, he smelled that scent, but he couldn't figure out where it's coming from. That deer itself had this scent gland on his own body. So his own body was creating that scent, but notice the deer had made the assumption that the scent must be coming from outside someplace. The deer didn't recognize that the scent was coming from its own body. The 10 boys were running around like crazy, looking for their missing boy, having failed to count themselves. Those are pretty good metaphors that reveal how ridiculous, sorry to use the word, but it's true, how ridiculously misdirected is our search for happiness through conventional worldly activities. It is. It is ridiculously misdirected. Now, a further comment here. Somebody might argue, yeah, Swamiji, we're all looking for happiness outside, but let it be. Let it be. Whatever you want to say. Fine, we find some little bits of happiness here and there, right? Remember, drop the candy and lick your fingers. You get something. Well, look at this. These boys were in this beautiful, beautiful natural scene. Were they enjoying themselves as they were running around looking for their missing classmate? They were miserable. They felt so much stress and anxiety. Where is their missing classmate? They weren't having fun at all. So how are we doing? We run around in life looking for happiness. No doubt we lick our fingers now and then and enjoy things. But overall, it's kind of stressful. There's some anxiety because there's so many things we want. There are so many obstacles to fulfilling our desires. It requires so much effort. Those boys, by the way, ran around the entire day looking for their missing classmate. At the end of the day, they all fell to the ground exhausted. Do you ever feel exhausted? Maybe it's because we're running around like these boys. Running around in this futile search for what is already here now. Okay, the story has several parts. We'll move on to the next part. So these boys are all laying on the ground, sobbing next to the stream. A passerby comes, and the passerby sees these 10 boys sobbing and asks, what happened? And one of the boys narrates this whole terrible story. And as the boy is narrating the sad story, this man mentally counts all 10 boys are there. This man is also astute enough to figure out that these boys are not that clever. And he figured out that they miscounted. They failed to count themselves. So this passerby tells the boys who are sobbing at this point, he says, hey, why are you crying? The missing boy is here now. Very interesting. The missing boy is here now. Did the man tell the truth? Absolutely. Statement of truth, statement of fact. The boys all looked around. Where is he? Where is he? He's here now. They're looking around. None of them could find the missing boy. Notice they're still looking in the wrong place. Now here, this is something we need to pause here. There's a really important point to be made at this juncture in the story. The passerby told the boys the truth. Did their problem go away? Didn't solve the problem. In the same way, someone can tell you the truth. In fact, someone told you a truth long ago, probably your mother, who said the true source of happiness is within you. She told you the truth. Did it solve your problem? Then later, you started learning some Vedanta. You read a book, and what did the book tell you? You are Satchidananda. Did the book tell you the truth? Yes. Did that solve your problem? No. So notice what the point is. Telling you the truth is not enough. Now allow me a little bit of an aside here. As a teacher, one thing I'm very aware of is teaching methodology. In schools, they say that it's important for a teacher not to tell the students, but to show the students. This is the kind of language that they use. Don't tell them, show them. So what does it mean to show? To use my guru's language, it means to create a situation where the students cannot help but discover what you want to discover. Almost his exact words. To create a situation where the students cannot help but discover. To use some different words, the job of the teacher is not to tell the students, but rather to lead the students to discover for themselves. This applies to all areas of learning, but especially Vedanta. Look, how many times have you read your true nature is Satchidananda? You are not your body, you're not your mind, blah, 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 blah. You've read all these books. All of that is true. And yet you're sitting here this evening. I presume it's because reading all those books hasn't worked yet. And understandably so. Here's an important point about teaching. The subject matter to be conveyed is important. But what is actually more important is the methodology, the teaching methodology. If the teacher has the subject matter but has no proper methodology to make the students discover, if the teacher can only tell them, if the teacher cannot show them, if the teacher doesn't have those skills, whatever the teacher wants to convey will never be received. So the methodology of teaching is as important or even more important than what is being taught. Do you get the point? It's not merely saying something. There's a teaching methodology that is absolutely crucial. And this, by the way, is what makes Vedanta unique, is its teaching methodology. An important point. There are many other spiritual traditions that say the equivalent of your true nature, Atma, is divine, is Satchidananda. Vedanta doesn't have a patent, so to speak, on that language. In fact, no one has a patent on truth. If you find the same truth in another spiritual tradition, why should we be surprised? I mean, what is true? Remember this A squared plus B squared equals C squared stuff? Okay, that was true in ancient Greece. Is it true in India? Is it true in America? Truth is true. you should expect to find it everywhere. You shouldn't expect to find it only in one place. If it's true, it's universally true. You should expect to see it everywhere. Well, this truth, that your true nature is Satchidananda Atma, the source of happiness, this is universally true. Of course, we should expect to find it in other religious and spiritual traditions as well. That's no surprise. It should be there. So, Vedanta also says your true nature is Satchidananda Atma. But what makes Vedanta unique is not what it teaches, but rather how it teaches. Honestly, the teaching methodology employed by Advaita Vedanta is unique, it is powerful, and it is absolutely capable in leading you step by step by step to discover what the ancient rishis discovered. It's a process. It's not just telling you, but rather guiding you on a process of self-inquiry. The Sanskrit term Atma vichara. Atma, self, vichara, inquiry. Atma vichara is something you have to do. Can a teacher do it for you? No one can do it for you. But what is a teacher's role in guiding you to properly perform that process of self-inquiry? To lead you step by step through that process so that you can discover what the ancient rishis discovered. This is the uniqueness of Vedanta. Not in what it teaches, but rather in how it teaches. And to illustrate that how it teaches, we haven't finished the story yet, so we'll go back to the story. So the first part I said illustrates that merely telling the truth doesn't work. There must be a proper teaching methodology employed. And the passerby knows a methodology. So the passerby said, the 10th boy is here now. The boys continued to cry. The passerby knew that he had to wield a proper teaching methodology. And he did. He called one of the boys over to his side, and he said, "Count." The boy counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The man said, "You counted 9. You forgot to count yourself. You are the 10th. You are the 10th. The 10th thou art." Tat tvam asi. The 10th thou art. Tat tvam asi. Notice the methodology was crucial. It's the methodology that allowed the boy to discover his mistake. And of course, the other 9 boys are watching, and simultaneously, all 10 of the boys enlightened, so to speak. Now, very interesting, because what did they get for the sake of their enlightenment? They're all filled with joy and elation, knowing that no one had died. They were sobbing because they assumed their class. I didn't say this. I neglected to say that they were sobbing because they conclude that their missing classmate had drowned in the river, and the current swept his body away. They had concluded that. So when they discovered that no one had actually died, they were elated. They were so happy. Ananda, bliss. What did they get? Did they get Ananda? Did they get they didn't get anything. They got rid of their confusion and ignorance, which was the source of their suffering. This is Vedanta. They failed to recognize themselves as the one they were looking for. That non-recognition led them on this fruitless search, futile search. They suffered and suffered and suffered. Only when they discovered that the truth the one they're looking for is within, only then did their suffering come to an end. What a perfect metaphor for Vedanta. Failing to recognize our innate fullness and completeness, we set about searching for happiness outside. That search too is futile until we use the methodology of Vedanta, not to get something, but to remove that self-non-recognition, that veil of ignorance. Your true Atma is an already existent fact. You already are that. To use Pujya Swami Dayananda's words, you already are that which you want to become. You already have that which you want to possess. His exact words. What is the problem? Self-non-recognition, that veil of ignorance. When that veil of ignorance is removed, your true nature becomes obvious to you. It's always been there, but it's covered up. But when it becomes obvious to you, then the necessity of running about in the world chasing after happiness, the necessity goes away. The sense of desperation goes away. Last comment here. As long as the boys are running around like crazy, they will never, ever discover the one they're looking for. So they have to settle down. Right? Here's another issue with the methodology. Suppose the boys, this is just for fun, I hadn't planned on this, but it fits in nicely, and it may relate to a future subject matter. The boys are sobbing and sobbing, wildly sobbing. What? Their classmate has died. You would also sob. Now, imagine the passerby trying to talk to the boys. You can't even talk to them. They're sobbing uncontrollably. So before the passerby can help him, two things have to happen. One is they have to stop running around. Second is they have to quiet down and stop sobbing. Now, this actually relates quite nicely to what we're doing now. You have stopped running around. You're not... This evening, you could have gone to the mall shopping. You could be sitting in front of a TV. You could be going out to a nice dinner. You could go to a movie. Any number of things you could have done tonight. You're sitting here. So to be sitting here means you're not running around out there looking for happiness. You're sitting here. So that's step one. As long as the boys are running around out there, there's no chance. As long as people are running around in the world, there's no chance. So to recognize that going to the mall and going to the restaurant and movie and all of that, you yourselves have recognized it's not enough. That's why you're sitting here now. Very important first step. Then the second step, as long as the boys are sobbing uncontrollably, nothing will go in. And this introduces a future topic. We can't get into the topic in detail now, but another issue, the passerby has an effective methodology, but that methodology won't work until the boy stops sobbing uncontrollably. So here, we are exposing ourselves to this powerful teaching methodology of Advaita Vedanta, but this powerful teaching methodology won't work properly unless our minds are properly prepared. This is a big topic. I'll just describe it briefly here. It'll take a whole class we'll spend on it in the future. The topic in Sanskrit, it's called adhikaritvam. Who is an adhikari? And let me warn you here that Sanskrit is not Hindi. Hindi has a different meaning for adhikari. The Sanskrit meaning of adhikari that we use in Vedanta classes is this: a qualified student. We're not talking about someone who's in charge or someone who has authority. Those are the common Hindi meanings. Our meaning of the word adhikari is a qualified student. A qualified student is whom? One who is capable of performing that Atma vichara, that self-inquiry, guided by the teacher and the teachings of Vedanta. If, however, the student lacks that adhikaritva means ness, the state of being an adhikari, if the student is not prepared, like the boys were weeping uncontrollably, if a Vedanta student doesn't have a prepared mind, then this methodology, as powerful as it is, will be inadequate. Well, not inadequate. It won't work. In fact, it is adequate. The problem is here. The problem is if our minds are not prepared or qualified, if our minds are incapable of making use of this methodology in that process of Atma vichara. It's a big topic. We can't go further on that tonight. I just thought it was nice to connect to these boys sobbing uncontrollably. So two things had to happen. One is they had to stop running around. Second is they had to stop sobbing uncontrollably. In the same way, in order to solve this problem of suffering, two things have to happen. One already has. You're not running around, at least right now. You are here for the sake of solving this problem of suffering. And then the second part we're going to have to explore in further classes, and that is what is required for us to be prepared students capable of doing that process of self-inquiry, guided by these teachings. We'll see all of that in the coming classes. Om sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet, asato ma satgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityor ma hamritangamaya. Om shanti shanti shanti.